Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Locked On Cavs podcast. I'm Chris Manning. That's Evan Dammerel. On today's show, segment one, talking about Greg Buckner being promoted to associate head coach on JB Bickerstaff's staff. Segment two, talking about the latest Cavs draft news as we get closer to the NBA draft. And segment three, talking about Colin Sexton as we kind of inch closer to his free agency thing as he's posting videos of him dunking, which is very fun. That's all coming up today on Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast. First, want to thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. Remember, we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is also brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, I'm Chris Manning, covering the Cavs for places like SB Nation Fear the Sword and Diamond Up Rocks. My man over there, he's currently in parts unknown, but he's away. So his audio, just people know, is going to sound a little bit different today, but he's here. He's doing well, I think. It's Evan Dammerel from Facebook's Right to Newland. Evan, what's going on, buddy?
Not a whole lot. Yeah, I had an extended stay on the old vacay, work trip, if you will, for reasons that will remain private this time. But not if you haven't yet, folks. That's all I got to say. Chris, how are you doing?
Doing good. So just so people know, we are in a little bit of a transition. Things figuring out things.
So you're in a void. I'm in a hotel room, but you're in a void.
I'm currently reading some things in my office. We have people notice we haven't been quite the content pushes up and aside. Look, it's been a busy stretch of time. We're navigating it. We're hoping that this week is the start of return to normalcy. We thank you for sticking with us, and we're happy to be back talking about draft stuff. Look, things happen. Life happens. It is what it is.
Normalcy. Let's remove the term normalcy from our vocabulary. Let's just thrive in the chaos that is life, and let's live, laugh, and love as every Ray Dunner puts on their wall at night.
Yeah. Okay. So I have a Ray Dunn pencil thing looking at me right there. Right to
Dude, I have a living joke with my girlfriend where she's like, I found something for the house, and my first question will be done. And if it's no, and then I proceed to listen to about it. If it's yes, I have to agree it goes at the house, but I'm just not going to be thrilled about it because I don't need everything to say like coffee or sugar or water. This is a cup. That's what you drink out of it.
Okay, fair. All right, so again, first segment, we're talking about Greg Buckner, promoted to associate head coach under JB Bickerstaff. This is first reported by ESPN Danger Wojnarowski. Evan, here's my take on this that I sort of just it doesn't.
The floor is yours. So you have a take. Yeah. I necessarily don't have much to say on this.
Yeah, so it's hard for us to look at Buckner in like a vacuum because we don't get we talked to him like the one time he filled in for JB after JB was ejected and then they won the game. Buckner was his fill-in there. They have a relationship for several years at this point. They're contemporaries in a lot of ways in terms of their age and their experience in the game. Buckner, in the way that the Woj report was framed, was really talked about as one of the guys that helped the Cleveland defense take that big step up last year, up into the top 5 of the league, or however you want to sort of frame that. What I think is interesting about this more than anything else, and I don't even know what it means. I have a hard time ascribing value to this. It's that the Cavs have hired another associate head coach. Let's go back in time. Okay. David Blavitt is brought in as Cleveland Cavaliers head coach. Tyronn Lue is his associate head coach as the steady man in the chair, right? He ends up taking over for David Blatt. Famously, the Cavs win the title. Ty Lue's in my mind, greatest coach in franchise history. Then John Beilein comes in, who happens to be his associate head coach. It's JB Bickerstaff. Mm-hmm. JB Bickerstaff is now the Cleveland Cavaliers head coach. Got a massive contract extension last year. So I'm not here to say that, yes, Greg Buckner is going to be the head coach who replaces JB Bickerstaff. That is not what I think is happening here. That's obviously not what is happening here, to be explicit about it. What I think is happening and what I think is interesting is that they kind of have repeatedly, both in the Kobe Altman era and then not in the Kobe Altman era, because remember the Blatt hiring was a David Griffin, Dan Gilbert production, not a Kobe Altman, Dan Gilbert production.
Even though Kobe Altman was technically there.
Right, but he doesn't get the credit or blame for pulling that lever, right? What I think is interesting is that they are spending the money to retain assistants. He's going to get a pay bump from this, and he's getting a bigger title. There's a prestige attached to the job that you would think there's more responsibility. He's a level above the other assistants based on that title. I think that and that continuing to be a thing is interesting. I don't know exactly what it means, but it's interesting.
It is interesting. I think interesting is a good way to put it. I think you laid it out nicely with it being a clear pay bump and obviously like an upgrade in responsibilities if you are Greg Buckner. I think the Woj reporting on him kind of being one of the architects behind Cleveland's defensive turnaround next to Bickerstaff's just, input and tactical planning on his part was probably this is a well-deserved upgrade and pay bump. Let's just be frank. He's been an assistant coach. I looked up his resume a little bit. He was a player development coach with the Rockets for a while, and then he joined Memphis's coaching staff under Bickerstaff. And then, so those two of us have obviously crossed paths, and then he is now back in Cleveland with Bickerstaff as well. So I think it's smart if this is the guy who JB tabs is like maybe his break glass in case of I get it ejected kind of coach. Like this is maybe just this next step in the right direction because maybe Greg Buckner has head coaching aspirations in this league one day, and maybe him actually shouldering some of the responsibility, not just in title alone, but like in actual responsibilities and day-to-day situations like that could be a good way for JB to kind of like prepare him and develop him into becoming one of the league's next head coaches. Because if you ask JB, he's a big advocate of black men being coaches in this league, and Greg Buckner is one of those. And if JB's helping a former player and also one of his friends, but also one of his assistants that he's had a history with for almost half a decade now, this is just another step in making that vision a reality and, just kind of diversifying the coaching front a little bit too.
Yeah, here's an interesting thing, a couple things about this and reading about him. Number one, I think the former player thing is key. Came into the league in 1990, 2000, played a year for the Grand Rapids Hoops in the CBA out of college, played at Clemson, spent time with Dallas, Philly, Denver, Minnesota, and Memphis. Made the playoffs a couple times. Never did, obviously didn't have like he's not going to be the former player turned coach a la like Chauncey Billups or Steve Nash, but like he fits the mold we're seeing of more men of color and former players, that kind of being a way that we're seeing coaches go because that's what players are resonating with. And I think that's obviously a good way to go. Interestingly, in 2008, he was traded to the Memphis Grizzlies, okay, along with OJ Mayo, Marco Yaric, and Antoine Walker for Kevin Love, Mike Miller, Brian Cardinal, and Jason Collins.
As soon as J. Mayo traded to Memphis, it was like, yep, I know this exact trade.
Yeah, like very funny that he is, he's about 10 years older than Kevin Love. He's 45, will turn 46 before next season. Buckner will. It's funny that he was once traded for a guy who
he's like 30 years younger than Kevin Love. Guys on this roster.
Yeah, Kevin Love is treated old, and Greg Buckner is like young and youthful, but he's just, he's just in his 40s, and Kevin Love has the graying side hair, which looks good on him. I think this is. I think if he, I would. This is one of the things that I'm going to say. I want to put a pin in this, and like come media day, I think I want to like ask Bickerstaff, being like, okay. And Altman this too, because he's now been involved in a couple of these decisions. Like, what does it mean to have an associate head coach? You're obviously not going to have, in the way that basketball works and is played and everything, you're not going to have the offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Defensive coordinator kind of one-to-one. You're going to have a situation. Right. It's different. Like you will have guys that maybe have more structure and input on that side of the ball. And I think Buckner would skew more towards the defensive side, it would seem, to my understanding of it, like a little more towards the organizing the defense. But I want to ask him, okay, you have an associate head coach. JB, you were an associate head coach. What is the importance of having this role on your staff? And like, why is this something the organization has continued to hire? Because not every team does this. And I don't know. I don't want to ascribe positive or negative to it. I just think it's interesting.
I do think it's interesting as well. Are you surprised Luke Walton didn't get the tap? Because a lot of people were asking me that too. It's not a lot of people, but a few people were asking me that. Like, why wasn't it Luke Walton, who clearly has more experience as a prior former head coach? Like, wouldn't that make sense to make his title the associate head coach? Or do you think it's just let's retain, let's reward the guy that's been cutting his teeth with us for a while?
Well, I think it's that.
I think it's the latter because Walton's the new head, and you obviously don't just like reward him with the hot in term other than head coach on Cleveland's like coaching staff.
I don't even think it's that as so much as it is that you're in a more stable position now. I mean, you looked at David Blatt and you looked at Blatt and it was like, is this guy going to be able to handle this? Let's get Ty Lue, who David Griffin by all accounts wants to hire.
Handle it.
Right.
Coaching President Obama meant nothing to him.
Okay. But you go through this these coaching hires and situations where like you're in a state of transition and you bring in this hand to help your unorthodox hire try to succeed, right? Like that was the template with these other ones, right? This is a different. It's not Bickerstaff is like the NBA
That's where it's
vet.
really interesting to me because you can draw
Yeah,
parallels with the Bayline and Blatt situations and like having Lou or
this is
Vickers
a
kind of
this
supporting
this
him.
is this
It's
works.
completely
Yeah,
right field.
this is someone that was already in house. This isn't someone you're bringing in to support your unorthodox head coaching hire. You're bringing in you're investing in something that was already here and that you believe already worked. And that is a different way to approach this, but they still added that title, gave the pay bump, I would assume, all that stuff. All
Mhm.
right, after the break, let's talk about the latest in Cavs draft workouts. Obviously, they had it's been well reported by now. They had one last Wednesday. Malachi Branham did not participate. A bunch of other guys did. We're going to unpack sort of the names there and sort of what we think's going on there. But Evan, you're going to tell everyone first about our friends at TrueBill.
For sure, man. Do you know why free trials renew without your consent? It's a business scam out to get you. Do not let greedy corporations pocket your money. Download Truebill today and take control of your subscriptions right now. Truebill is a new app that lets you identify and stop paying for subscriptions you don't need, want, or just simply forgot about. On average, people save up to $701 per year with Truebill. Because companies cancel, Truebill makes it incredibly simple. Just link your account and Truebill will cancel your unwanted subscriptions in one tap. And your Truebill concierge is there when you need them to cancel unwanted subscriptions so you don't have to. Truebill has over 2 million users and helps save them over $100 million. Like Maddie B, who says, in a matter of seconds, I saved $660 for the year on my DirecTV bill and $120 a year on my cereal. And I also saved $840 a year on car insurance. Don't fall for subscription scams. Start canceling today at truebill.com/lockedonnba. Go right now. truebill.com/lockedonnba. Thousands a year.
All right, we're back here on the Locked On Cavs podcast. I want to tell you also, by the way, to go check out the Locked On NBA mock draft. The Ultimate NBA mock draft starts June 16th with over 50 insiders. Nothing equals the Ultimate NBA mock draft. The Locked On NBA Big Board draft experts plus Odyssey insiders. First pick is June 16th. Search Ultimate NBA mock draft and follow now so you don't miss a pick. Evan, let's talk about, speaking of the draft, let's talk about the Cavs hosting a draft workout last week. I think there's a lot of Malachi Branham from Ohio State, who we'll talk about on tomorrow's episode. Is someone who was going to participate but did not, cited reportedly an injury, could be some other things if you understand how the draft process works. I think I think there are some names though that are interesting in how you could think about this pick. So Evan, why don't you let's give everyone like the 1 minute TLDR and what kind of we know about that draft workout last week.
So from what I was made to understand, the Cavs hosted more words at this pre-draft workout. They've been hosting second-round guys since earlier the week prior, and now they're really starting to sink their teeth into some of the first-round guys that they could get in, and they're trying to get in as many people as possible prior to the June 23rd draft date. What Chris was kind of alluding to was, yes, maybe Malachi Branham did hurt his ankle, and his last pre-draft workout was technically with the New York Knicks, from what I remember correctly. So he could have injured it while working out for the Knicks, and then who knows? Because at the same time, like he also had the Wizards lined up too. So there may be a team that's picking ahead of Cleveland, like called Branham's camp and said, like, "Hey, we have your guy kind of circled as the person we want to take," and they just are kind of shutting things down, kind of similarly-ish to the Phoenix Suns promising Dion Waiters a spot and the Cavs taking him at 4. But other than Branham, who was they had EJ Liddell there from what I heard. They had Terry Eason there from what I heard. Marjon Beauchamp was there. Keon Ellis from Alabama was there as well. And the fifth guy, it's Seabron. Seabron or Seaborn. If it's Seaborn, he has the most metal name ever. But in my mind, it's just the
like
dyslexia.
Sam Seaborn from The West Wing.
Exactly. So like, or just like it makes me think of, just because of my Game of Thrones rewatch, just makes me think he's from the Iron Islands or something like that. But a Greyjoy, if you will. But from what I heard, Terry Eason did not look good. He just has struggled. There's like a lot of the questions that came with him are still rearing their heads in this pre-draft process. EJ Liddell looks solid. Keon Ellis is like looks sharp. Beauchamp, like there's a lot of intrigue. I think the Cavs are just trying to do their due diligence on so many prospects. A huge like variance on like these guys are graded out as first round guys, these guys are graded out as second round or late second or possibly undrafted guys. Like the Cavs are probably going to like do their due diligence on all these picks in this draft. You only have so many opportunities to get these guys in just because of how hectic logistically this can be. And obviously at 14, you don't really know who's going to go ahead of you in those 30. Like Chris said, it's peak lying season too. Like a lot of teams and a lot of agents and a lot of players in between. Like I think players won't lie when they said I've worked out for these teams and I'm about to work out for these teams, and they'll say everything
but
work out
but
well.
when you talk to agents,
no player will ever say like, "Man, that workout sucked." Like no, they're gonna like, "Oh, it went great."
No, but like agents
So
this time of year will be like, yeah, like this team loves my client, like they have interest in my client. Teams will kind of not go out of their way to say anything particularly negative because like, hey, it's kind of unfair, but also like they don't want to like piss off these agents they have to deal with in other circumstances. Like there's a lot of wires that kind of like layers to kind of get to the truth of like what is sort of happening here. Like sometimes like what it's hard to know like what any of this means in terms of like if there's someone that they say like killed it one of the if like we get to the after the draft and they say at the draft thing it's like like we had Bo champion and like he killed it, and that's part of the reason of why he was there at 14 and we took him even though we believe it's a development. And then 3 years from now you read a profile about him as he's breaking out and it's like I think about like the Bam out of bio nuggets from the Zach Lowe profile of Bam that he did, right? Like some of the things that show up in the workouts that can entice teams, and we don't always know what's happening. We frankly never almost know what's happening, and the Cavs are one of the teams that it's their right. I don't, but like
Cavs don't have to tell the media or anybody anything about their pre-draft.
But other teams will like have like media availability with those prospects they've worked out and like tell you who exactly worked out for the team. And I'm just like, transparency's neat. That's cool.
I did have one Cavs like executive tell me, he's like, yeah, it's really weird we don't tell anybody who we just don't. I'm like, yeah, like everyone else is thinking, but
this has been my Cavs take, my strongest Cavs take for 7 years. That it's just like they're weird.
It was working out that day.
Yeah. So yeah, so like what I think is interesting here is that there's just a lot of names, and like if Branham having a promise, if he ends up going, or he just ends up going before the Cavs with or without that promise, that is like an interesting wrinkle into this because like he makes a lot of sense the more you think about him. But like if that pushes someone like Johnny Davis down, if they go with an Abaji or a Beauchamp or like how they play this, I just think like the amount of names out there, and some of them are just not names that like probably make sense at 14. Like I don't think like Keanu Ellis seems like a number 14 guy. Is like he could be a good player, but a 4-year player like seems like a second round grade from some like. And like look, Easton maybe is sliding. That's interesting. Liddell is like maybe in play at 14, but he's also just one of those guys that like seems like he's getting pushed a little later in that first round based on like where we've seen the mocks. Like there's just like a lot of stuff right now, and 14 is just like a weird place to be when we're consuming all of this. It's just like you could convince me of a lot of things, I think.
I think just the fact that I think it was David Aldridge who said like, "Hey, don't believe anything a mock draft is going to say because mock drafters don't really have a full grasp of what teams are doing." And I think big boards are a better way to go. Like you can rank prospects in terms of overall talent, but I think pegging certain players to certain teams, unless it's just like it's easier to read the tea leaves when Jabari Smith, when he's in Orlando, says, "Okay, I'm only working out for the Magic and the Thunder." So you have a 50-50 shot of picking where Jabari Smith.
Cade shut it down last year. He just worked out for the Pistons. He shut it down. Jalen Green didn't work out for the Cavs last year. He was trying to angle to go number 2. The Cavs are in the range of the draft where like they both can get more looks at guys and like have more guys theoretically come through, both in terms of first round prospects and then second round prospects. But they also just like aren't going to get everybody, and it's also impossible to know who will actually be available to them. Really, like Kobe Allman and his team could have the best guess possible, and they're probably like no team would ever do this, but like I would love for a team like 1 year just like leak out like their internal mock 1 year and just see how it compared. Like just like put it out in the open, like leak it out like anonymously. I would love to see like if they could ever do that where it's like a team agrees, we'll do this anonymously. We'll do this
draft like mock usually like that fresh.
There'd be like a whole, I would want like a project almost where it's like all the team, like you get execs from like 3 teams and they just say like, hey, here's like, this is how we think this is going to go. And you all it is the names of the players. You don't provide any commentary. You don't provide like maybe like some of like how things broke after the fact, but it's all off the record because I'll never do it on the record. I'm willing to do anonymity here. Like this is what we thought, and this is like how it broke differently and what we think about this, and like what we can learn from this. That would just be such an interesting thing that they would never do because that's just never how this works.
That would be interesting. The only reason I ask is because there is that semi-infamous photo of the Cavs like big board that had like Luka and Trey like above Ayton. They had like Sexton like fourth or fifth on like their overall big board at the time. So like that's just the only thing. It's like there's a lot of interesting things. Teams rank things differently. It's basketball, the pre-draft process is a little like more fluid. It's not as archaic, or it's more dynamic than it is static, like versus football, where a lot of teams have still adopted and used the Jimmy Johnson draft grading method, which is what he used at the Cowboys to build that dynasty. And then a lot of teams have just emulated that, like grading prospect on prospects overall. But it'll be interesting. We're kind of like, we're really gunning along. Like, I'm not even sure, like a week before the draft, like the Cavs will have like a clear idea of how it's going to go. Other than 1 and 2 for sure, between Smith and Holmgren, I think that's just like you can pencil one of those two into either Oklahoma City or Orlando, and then that's when it becomes a free for all, because the Shade Sharp report of him slot to 12 and his preferences to go to the Thunder at 12. That was a surprising development because a lot of people viewed him as like a top 5 prospect, but then him just kind of just being such a polarizing prospect has really made his stock tank too. So there's probably some legitimacy to maybe just some of that reporting. Like maybe he is going to be the guy who falls in the draft, but I also don't know if like maybe there's a team who won't be intrigued by her.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, after the break, we're going to talk about Colin Sexton.
Lying. That's what I'm saying. They're lying.
Yeah, everyone
in some way, shape, or form, Shaden Sharp's camp is lying.
The title of this episode is "Everyone is Full of It." Honestly, maybe not.
Like,
that's not a good SEO.
One imposter is sus.
Yes. Okay. After the break, though, we're going to talk about Colin Sexton. I'm going to pitch Evan a team for a sign and trade, just because, like, you know what, I feel like having some fun today. But first, going to tell you about our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for your betting stats and sports info. Find all of the latest sports developments, news, odds, including this year's basketball championship matchup, the NHL Hockey Conference Finals, Major League Baseball, and of course, the NHL Finals now, and of course, all of the fighting news from MMA to boxing and the UFC. BetOnline is your continued source for your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and more. For instance, the Warriors are now minus 135 favorites on BetOnline go in the finals, heading into Game 5 with the Celtics plus 115 underdogs. And in the NBA draft world, which obviously I think everyone cares about now, Jabari Smith is a minus 225 favorite to go number 1 overall. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. That's BetOnline. That's where the game starts. All right, last segment. Chris Manning from Diamond on Brox and Fear the Sword. Evan Damrell from Facebook's Right on Euclid is with me as usual. Colin Sexton. So he posted a video of him dunking, his first dunk since his surgery last week. Very fun. I know like we're all excited about the draft and like thinking about it, and like there's so much intrigue there. I really feel like the most impactful pivot point of the summer remains the Colin Sexton thing, and I like can't drag my thoughts away from that as we're so like 3 weeks away from free agency opening. Like, we don't know exactly how this is going to play out yet. Darius Garland, him like went to Turks and Caicos together. Good for them. Darius Garland said it's not up to him, but he'd like Colin to be back. We'll see what the money looks like. There's a lot of teams that reportedly have interest in him. The Lakers are the latest team thrown out there. The Spurs are out there. The Spurs is a signing trade to make tons of sense to me.
The Lakers tough. Eco say.
Oh, then never mind. Not accurate. This is the thing. I have not been on the Twitters, so it's been good for my brain. But
in my extended stay, I've had a lot of free time, and I've read into this stuff. And that's when I said, "With what money?" And Lee said, "Chris wasn't present. Neither was I, but I caught the tail end of the dumb Colin Sexton carrying like standoff between friends. It's just I don't know. Go and enjoy the weather. It's outside and life is too short to be pissed off online about athletes who will never notice you exist."
Yes. So I I think that like this remains the most like interesting pivot
Oh
point
yeah,
of the whole thing. I really tend to think that like I was talking about this with a friend who will go unnamed. You're friends with him as well. What about Keldon Johnson for Colin Sexton? If the Spurs are really interested.
yeah, I would. I could well, it'd be
Okay.
funny just because draft blunders will circle with the Dylan Windler like swap for Keldon Johnson makes you wonder what could have been. But I mean, yeah, why not? But at the same time, I think I'd rather have the mystery box of Colin Sexton too, because I think you could probably Johnson is extension eligible this offseason, correct? Yeah, he is. So I had to think about when he was drafted.
Yeah, he's
He
a Garland year.
same
He's
time
another
year.
guy in that Garland Windler KPJ class.
So, like, obviously, the Cavs have the luxury of not signing him to an extension right away. Like, if they traded for Keldon Johnson, just let this play out for a year, and then maybe approach it next offseason. But at the same time, if you can hit that sweet spot with Sexton in his camp in terms of what he's looking at and versus the Cavs kind of getting that sweet spot as well. Like, I know Colin, from what I heard in his camp, are kind of looking for an annual salary that starts at 20 million and then knock it from there. But he wants to be paid like a starting guard and be rewarded as the guy. But there's also, like we've talked about ad nauseum, this point, a lot of uncertainties if you're the Cavs. Like, they have proven they are a winning team without him this season, but that could have been a flash in the pan. Just in what if they fall flat on their face next year? He has the knee injury, obviously. Like, he's not like the main focal point of Cleveland offensively, but like he would certainly benefit offensively. I don't know, man. I think if you to the right price point, I'd rather have him than Johnson, because Johnson could get paid handsomely. Because there are moments when you're like, okay, I can really see it, but if you put him in the right situation, maybe it's not like it is in San Antonio, where they have an overabundance of guards and things like that. Maybe there's a better way for him to capitalize on his opportunity too. Is kind of what I'm getting at. But I wouldn't hate it when signs an offer sheet with the Spurs and the Cavs just are not comfortable matching, and Keldon Johnson is part of the return. I would not be opposed to that whatsoever, because you're getting a young, talented player who addresses a clear position of need for you. But I just think it's funny because Shams tweeted that the Johnson, and then they walked it back and took that, and it just makes you wonder, hey, what if they just stuck with it?
Yeah, the draft will be fun. I will like enjoy talking about the draft. You should check out the Ultimate NBA Mock Draft and all of like check on Rafael Barlow and what all of that Richard Stayman and them are doing on the Big Board Show. I just like can't help but look ahead to what that is, and just like that is like I think like the pick will matter going forward. It's not going to matter a lot for next season because 14 picks just aren't going to help you a ton. Maybe like you buck the trend again, but we'll see. We'll see if they get anyone entering the second round. I mean, like I'm ready to do the David Roddy deep dive if they can take my jacked king, in the second round.
It's just once the Cavs take a linebacker, so the Browns have some actual depth.
That's not even that. I just want to like watch this like weirdo. I want to have like this. I want to have like as much weird baked into my schedule as possible. And David Roddy would be a vibe. I just think the Sexton.
But no, you'd be busting those with the adjustable blinds at Martin Rickman's nice home, saying, "Listen, I need to do a David Roddy feature for dime.
Send me to Colorado State. Pay for pay me.
Rams.
Yeah, the Cavs do have a former assistant there who moved from Cleveland to there. So I'm just saying inside sources. But I just think the Sexton thing is just going to be the thing that like the Darius Garland max contract feels like a slam dunk.
It feels
like something that
like, I'm not going to bat an eye when they say within
when that offer comes through, I'm just like, sure, whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Whatever
it's just
shape
like
that takes him.
I think Collins' contract will probably shape the destiny of Cleveland's offseason. Like, if they sign him to a deal and they get it done early, like, sure, we'll probably have an easier understanding maybe what are the moves they're going to prioritize and make. Or if this goes out into RFA and they let Colin test the waters, that's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, this just feels like the pivot point. I'm just like thinking about like being all these scenarios. Like actually, the reason that I've taken everything down in the back of my office here is that I just have one of the crazy boards from I have the conspiracy board from Always Sunny. I'm becoming that meme, but for Colin Sexton for agency destinations.
Sexting crazy when they come hunting for us. That I'm in a hotel. I'm actually in witness protection. That was just like if Sexton leaves, they can't find us. Chris won't lose his hands. I won't be killed. It's all good from there. And that, folks, was a real thing that happened to us last summer.
Yeah, wild times. All right, that's going to wrap up today's show, though. Tomorrow we'll be back talking about Malachi Branham, the Ohio State guard slash wing slash really interesting prospect in depth. He's worth, I think, a longer look for us as we continue to get closer towards the draft. Later in the week, we'll do more draft stuff. We'll do some free agency stuff because it's time to start thinking about that a little bit. We're gonna have some fun. It's gonna be a good. It's getting into it's busy season. It's silly season. Thanks for sticking with us. Again, sorry for the lesser amount of stuff we've been putting out. It's just been weird times, but we're grinding along here. I'm in the void. Evan's in the hotel. He'll have his mic back soon.
Steph Curry is going to get a Finals MVP on a losing team. It's going to be wild times.
Oh, you have the You're taking the Celtics as dog.
No, I'm sticking with my Warriors and 6 pick, dude. Like, I feel good about it.
Okay.
Okay. After watching Boston shit themselves worse than Justin Rowan after a ship to Swenson's, like,
are you just like why are you throwing barbs at our guy? Like, what's going on?
No, Justin has said on multiple occasions because he has problems with gluten, he would gladly shit his pants to eat Swenson's because of how good it is.
All right, we're gonna end there. Everyone be well. And I don't know what to do with myself. Bye.